tonight, His Majesty the King and the Cypriot President hold talks on cooperation in economic, energy and other sectors as the two countries mark 53 years of relations. The European Union announces new guidelines for labeling products made in Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. And 14 refugees drown off Greece as EU leaders meet in Malta to discuss the migrant crisis. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty the King expressed Jordan's keen interest to further boost ties with Cyprus. King Abdullah spoke as he and Her Majesty Queen Rania welcomed Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiadis and his wife at Al Husseiniya Palace. During a one-on-one meeting with the Cypriot leader, followed by an expanded meeting attended by senior officials from the two countries, King Abdullah lauded Nicosia's support for Jordan through its membership of the European Union. He commended the level of cooperation as the two countries this year mark 53 years of diplomatic relations. The talks also dealt with the impact of the Syria crisis on Jordan and the influx of Syrian refugees, which had further strained the kingdom's already limited resources. President Anastasiadis called for more international support for Jordan to help it host more than 1.4 million Syrian refugees, saying Amman's humanitarian efforts are worthy of praise. The talks, attended by Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, stressed on the need to build on signed agreements in the investment, tourism and commercial fields. Cooperation in solar and renewable energy sector, as well as the chance for Jordan to benefit from the newly discovered natural gas off Cyprus's shore, also figure high on the meeting.
My dear friend, on behalf of myself and the government of Jordan and the people of Jordan, it is a great honor for us to welcome you to Jordan, to express the tremendous and warm relations we have between our two countries, celebrating 53 years of relations between our peoples. This is a relationship we treasure with tremendous pride, and again, I'd like to commend the tremendous support that you have given Jordan as a member of the European Union. I look forward to this discussion today that is going to continue to cement the relations on all levels. Obviously, politically, our relationship has been fantastic. We would like to see the opportunities of how we can obviously strengthen our economic relations, but as friends and as brothers and sisters, I think that this is a warm and family relationship that we are all treasuring, and I'm very delighted to have you and your delegation here in Jordan.
The Cypriot president was accorded full honors as he arrived at Al Husseiniya Palace for the talks. The two leaders were greeted by a guard of honor, and a brass band played the national anthems of the two countries. Cypriot First Lady Andri Anastasiadis visited the rose-red city of Petra and toured the Sikh, the Treasury and the Nabatean Theatre. She was briefed on the touristic attraction and the historic importance of the city as one of the world's new wonders. The First Lady of Cyprus The First Lady of Cyprus also called on the Children's Museum and was briefed on its activities through play, discovery and exploration. She was impressed with the educational programs provided by the museum, which is affiliated with the Queen Rania Foundation for Education and Development. A Jordanian employee who was killed in a shooting incident at a police training facility on Monday was laid to rest in his hometown of Zarqa. Aouni Aqrabawi was one of 6 people who were killed in Monday's shooting in the Muagga Training Academy east of Amman. Interior Minister Salam Hamad joined the victim's family, the Zarqa governor, senior public security officers and other mourners at the funeral. Hamad, representing His Majesty the King, offered his condolences to the family of the deceased, whom he called the son of every Jordanian working for his country. He said Jordanians who stood united in the face of challenges had managed over the years to overcome various crises and will remain cohesive against any attempt to tamper with the country's security and stability. The public security chief conveyed his condolences to the Aqrabawi family on behalf of his colleagues and vowed to stay firm to fend off terrorism and extremism. Israeli troops shot and critically wounded 2 Palestinians and scores of others were also injured during clashes across the occupied West Bank. Palestinian sources said some 94 protesters were lightly and moderately wounded in clashes that continued throughout the day in Ramallah and Bethlehem. The escalating tension came as Palestinians commemorated the death of late President Yasser Arafat with marches and protests in the 2 cities. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said his people would never forget Arafat as they gathered to commemorate the 11th anniversary of his death near his grave in the West Bank city of Ramallah. Palestinians have said Israel was behind Arafat's mysterious death. Several dozens gathered at his gravesite in the presidential compound in the West Bank city of Ramallah. Meanwhile, the occupation municipality of Jerusalem said it will approve the construction of 891 new settlement units in Gilo settlement. The settlement is built on Palestinian land in the city of Bethlehem east of Jerusalem. An Israeli source said the municipality claimed that the construction plan was approved in 2013 and that its adoption is only technical. The decision to announce the new construction coincided with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to the United States, where he met U.S. President Barack Obama. Amid the heightened tension, the European Union published new guidelines for labeling products made in Israeli settlements. The move drew furious reaction from Israelis. The Foreign Ministry said it was designed to pressure Israel over its settlement policy. It summoned the EU ambassador to Israel. Here's more.
New European guidelines demanding the labeling of products made in Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank come into force. Goods must carry the word settlement on the label when sold in European shops. Drawn up over 3 years by the European Union, the guidelines mean Israeli producers must explicitly label farm goods and other products that come from settlements built on occupied land. The EU does not recognize Israel's occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. Britain, Belgium and Denmark already affix labels to Israeli goods, differentiating between those from Israel proper and those that come from the Jordan Valley in the occupied West Bank. Now all 28 EU member states would have to apply the same labeling. Brussels insisted the move is technical and dismissed the suggestion of a boycott, pointing out that this is not telling consumers what not to buy.
This is not a boycott. I repeat again, this is not a boycott, because how can it be a boycott if the products are allowed to come onto the market as they have done previously also? And there's another important point here. The European Union is against sanctions, against boycotting, against isolation of Israel.
But Israeli officials were quick to denounce the move, calling it discriminatory, and said it would damage peace efforts with the Palestinians.
Israel rejects the EU decision. We think that this decision is of a discriminatory nature and it smacks of boycott. under the guise of a bureaucratic decision. What we see here is a political attempt to change the reality on the ground.
But Palestinian officials welcomed the move.
It confirms the illegality of Israeli settlements. It confirms that Israeli production inside the occupied territories is illegal. And it gives the European person the possibility of boycotting settlement products.
Israel's economy ministry estimates the impact will be about $50 million a year, affecting fresh produce such as grapes and dates, poultry, honey, olive oil, and cosmetics. That is around a fifth of the $203 million worth of goods produced in settlements each year. But it is a drop in the ocean next to the $30 billion of goods and services Israel exports to the EU annually, a third of all its exports. Hibel Atum for the News at 10.
A truck convoy laden with medicines and medical supplies arrived in the Gaza Strip to supplement the Jordanian hospital in the besieged Palestinian territory. The new aid shipment destined to the Gaza 38 Field Hospital crossed into besieged Gaza via Beit Hanun crossing on the border with Israel. The field hospital's commander said the aid truck convoy will enable the hospital to continue medical services to ease the plight of Gazans. He said medical staff at the clinic run by the Royal Medical Services of the Jordanian Armed Forces were providing services around the clock. Syrian soldiers fought their way into an air base in northern Syria and freed military personnel inside after a nearly 2-year siege by Daesh insurgents at the facility. A military source close to the government said the army was working to secure the Kaiwaris air base in Aleppo province, where soldiers and officers have been under attack since 2013. It is the most high-profile victory for Syria's army since Russia launched an air campaign in support of President Bashar al-Assad on September 30. Elsewhere, explosions rocked Syria's Hama province, and a number of injuries were reported in Douma outside Damascus after airstrikes. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is monitoring the conflict, said Russia's warplane raided areas of Douma amid bombardment on the city by forces loyal to Assad. Iraqi forces appear better positioned than ever to launch an offensive against Daesh militants controlling the key city of Ramadi. The army's effort over the past months to cut off supply lines to the city are having an effect. The fall of Ramadi, the capital of Anbar province, to Daesh in May was the biggest defeat of Iraq's central government in nearly a year. Retaking the city of 450,000 would provide a major boost to Iraqi security forces, who have mostly collapsed in the face of advances by the militant group. The ultimate goal for Iraqi forces is to break the militants' grip over their main stronghold, Mosul, the biggest city in the north. The Ramadi offensive has been impeded by heavy use of improvised explosive devices, inadequate troops and equipment due to government cash shortages. 14 migrants died and 27 were rescued by Turkish authorities after the boat sank on its way to the Greek island of Lesbos. The largest tragedy occurred as European leaders are meeting in Malta to discuss the ongoing migrant crisis. Slovenia, meanwhile, has taken measures to stem the flow of refugees crossing its borders. Here's more.
With razor wires and metal poles, the Slovenian army is building a fence to control the flow of migrants into the country. But can a barrier stop the migration? Border residents say no.
I was so happy about Europe having open borders. That was something that should make everyone happy. Now, instead of widening the Schengen border, we're getting these fences. I don't think they're needed at all, as they can't stop such a large number of refugees.
The fence strategy is likely to come up in Malta. European Union leaders are meeting there Wednesday in hopes of resolving their differences over how to deal with the migration crisis. One of the main points of contention is the idea of mandatory national quotas to share out asylum seekers, something Hungary opposes. The summit will also focus on longer-term problems, such as helping Africa create jobs so that fewer migrants leave. And as the Malta meeting gets underway, the March of Migrants moves on. Sita Kazusu works for the United Nations Refugee Agency in Serbia.
We gradually started to receive more new arrivals. For the last 2 days, our new arrivals is around 9,000 to 10,000. And then we heard that it's still coming around 9,000 from Macedonia.
Hello! And that's just a small percentage of the estimated 800,000 refugees and migrants who've arrived in Europe so far this year, with no sign of the crisis ending anytime soon.
More results of Myanmar's election have emerged, showing the opposition National League for Democracy party moving closer to a landslide victory. The Union Election Commission said Aung San Suu Kyi's party had won 135 of the 149 lower house seats, which have been counted so far. There are 440 seats in the lower house. The National League of Democracy said their own tallies show that the party has won over 81% of the lower house seats. On the streets, people were eagerly awaiting the final results, but were also worried that the generals would be reluctant to hand over power. Germany's national soccer team are gearing up for a friendly against France in Paris on Friday. The world champion trained in Munich under the watchful eye of head coach Joachim Löw. The Germans have qualified as top of Group D, while France qualify automatically as hosts. Here in Munich, Thomas Müller said the game has little relevance to Euro 2016, which the French will host. Also in football, Ivory Coast will be without Wilfred Bony and Salomon Kalou for their two-legged World Cup qualifier against Liberia after both withdrew from the squad. The Ivorian Federation said Bony hurt his hamstring at the weekend playing for Manchester City, while Touré of Gironde Bordeaux suffered a relapse of a previous injury. Kalou is suffering with headaches after a violent blow to the head playing in the Bundesliga for Hertha Berlin, the federation added. Ivory Coast have become used to appearing at the World Cup, qualifying for 2006, 2010 and 2014, and are determined to feature again in Russia in 2018. Now a look at the weather forecast. Chilly across much of the country tonight with fog forecast for the hilly areas. A slight rise in temperature will create fair weather across much of the hilly areas and moderate in the Jordan Valley. The Dead Sea should expect a high of 29 degrees. Further south, the moderate weather is also forecast for the port city of Aqaba with northerly fresh winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. His Majesty the King and the Cypriot President hold talks on cooperation in economic, energy and other sectors as the two countries marked 53 years of relations. The European Union announces new guidelines for labeling products made in Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. And 14 refugees drown off Greece as EU leaders meet in Malta to discuss the migrant crisis. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.